for at least 6 weeks. Once you start your calorie deficit, you have to continue to diligently track your food intake every single day. That includes Friday nights and Saturdays. It includes Sundays, days you go to work, days you're off, days you hang out with the friends, days you don't, days you sit around all day. You have to track, because I promise it will slowly but surely fade away from you. Tracking your food for 6 weeks is kind of like going back to school. Nobody wants to do it. You don't like it. It's an investment. It costs money. You don't want to. It's boring. I get it. But you do it anyways because you know it's better for your future. Same thing here. Track the food. Get an understanding for the servings, for the calories. Guarantee yourself that you are in the calorie deficit that you committed to. And if you do that, you will move in the right direction. Welcome to Only the Greatest Podcast. If you're feeling stuck and unsure what to do next in your fitness journey, we might be what you're looking for. My name is Philip. I own and operate OTG Fitness, which is a private personal training gym on the south side of Houston in Webster. I do this podcast every week with my best friend, Daryl. We've been friends since 3rd grade and working out together ever since. Also joining us today will be Sean. He's the one that makes this podcast not only sound great, but look good as well. Our goal here is to help Houston make its way up the ladder of health and fitness. So if you're in the Houston area and ready to become the greatest version of yourself, be sure to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Calorie deficits are a sensitive subject. And I think that has come to be because of the complexities that have been put around calories and foods in our life. If you haven't listened to last week's episode yet, I would highly encourage you to do so. We discussed a lot of nutrition information, how to speak to family, why it's so complicated, kind of a little bit about the industry of nutrition and diet stuff, diet food. Last week with Dr. Chapa, I would highly encourage you to check that out. I don't remember the number of the episode off the top of my head, but it'll just be one less than whatever today's episode is. So definitely check that out. And that might help uncover some, information behind why speaking about calorie deficits can be difficult. The reality of the situation, though, is that if you want to lose weight, change your body composition, a calorie deficit is necessary. So the types of people that should be in a calorie deficit is obviously anyone that wants to lose weight, right? If you're overweight, obese, a calorie deficit is going to help you get yourself moving in the direction that you want to go. A lot of times when people aren't necessarily super overweight, they don't think they should be in a calorie deficit. But in reality, what I've noticed after doing this for a long time, I've been personal training now for almost 10 years. I've owned OTG Fitness for almost 6 years at the recording of this podcast. And a lot of times, people that aren't necessarily super overweight, but do still want to change their body composition, a calorie deficit is still probably good for them. Because especially if they haven't lifted weights before, because newbie gains are real, and you can be in a calorie deficit and gain muscle at the same time if your body has not been exposed to progressive overload very much. So right when you first start working out, lifting weights, getting in the gym, it doesn't take much to build muscle. So you can build a lot of muscle while still in a calorie deficit. And I encourage that, actually. They're always wondering, should I focus on building muscle or should I focus on losing fat? My personal opinion, and what I've seen work, is you should focus on losing fat, because if you're working out the muscle part, it's going to happen. And so if we want to see a change in our bodies, the number one way you can do that is through the nutrition side of things. And a calorie deficit is step one to doing that. So what exactly is a calorie deficit, though? You hear that, you hear calories in, you hear calories out, you hear maintenance, you hear calorie surplus, calorie deficit, what are all these things? So, in short, a calorie deficit is when your body is expending more calories than it is taking in. If we're going to define maintenance, that is the point at which your body is taking in and expending the same amount of calories. So if we're expending more and taking in less, we are then in a calorie deficit, meaning we will lose body fat because we're expending more than we are taking in. If we are taking in more than we are expending, at that point, we are in a calorie surplus. We're going to be gaining weight. And that is what a lot of people are living in, whether they realize it or not. And I want to take a minute to discuss the complexities around this as well. This is very complicated stuff. I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to one. I'm a certified nutrition coach. And the complexities around calories in, calories out are very high. The goal is to simplify as much as possible. If people say calories in, calories out, or counting calories, that it doesn't work, here's the thing. It does work. The thing is, people just don't often track their calories correctly, and they don't always have an understanding, and as do I don't always either. It's with the calories out side of things. This is very complicated stuff that we're just trying to, simplify down into understanding. All the mechanisms that go on inside of our bodies between hormones, all that stuff is taking into account when you're talking about the calorie out side of the equation. So it is very complicated. The goal, though, is to not be complicated and to simplify. So at the end of the day, you just need to know that you need to expend more calories than you take in. And it is much easier to control the calories in than it is to raise the calories out. Quick example. Say I want to be in a 300 calorie deficit. Okay. Do I want to spend 45 minutes running on the treadmill or running outside, doing cardio, some extra workout, just to burn an extra 300 calories? Or can I just not take a couple of bites of a particular food? You see the difference? There's a huge time difference between those two things, huge effort difference. And I hate to break it to people and tell them that they don't burn nearly as many calories as they think. When you're spending an hour on the treadmill, you're not burning as many calories as you think you are. Does it help? Of course, for sure, 100% doing extra activity helps. And we're going to talk about that. But I can tell you that it's much easier and much more efficient, a better use of your time to just eat a little bit less. That's a much easier way to get into a calorie deficit. And something that I hear a lot that I think is important to touch on as well is this whole, starvation mode situation with our bodies. People say, I'm just not losing weight because I'm in starvation mode. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, you should be, but I'm putting up air quotes, starvation mode. Starvation mode, that's not a thing. If that's going on, there's something wrong with either the calories in or the calories out side of the equation. If starvation mode was real, then I could just starve myself to obesity. And the reality is that that's not going to happen. And we all know that. I don't know where this whole thing started. I'm assuming that it started with, people looking for the easy way out, saying that tracking calories doesn't work. It very much does work. Again, going back to what I said earlier, but starvation mode is not a real thing. If you're eating less than you're expending, you will lose weight. You're not going to gain weight because your body wants to store it for later. Again, if that was the case, I would just not eat for days and I would gain weight. And we all know that's not going to happen, right? So how much of a calorie deficit is necessary? It really depends on your goals. A nice good place to start is somewhere between the 300 and 500 calorie range. And in saying that, I want to emphasize that the difference between a 300 calorie deficit and 500 calorie deficit is pretty difficult to measure. Unless you are weighing out every single gram of your food to the T every single day, never taking an extra bite of anything, cooking all of your own food, never eating out, there's going to be some variation. Calories are very difficult to track, and I think this happens to a lot of people. So I just like to say a nice 500 calories is a good place to be. That is a big enough gap to make a difference. It's a big enough gap to know that you're actually in enough of a deficit. Going from a 100 calorie deficit to 200 calorie deficit and then taking a step to 300 and then taking a step to 400, I can tell you that that's almost an immeasurable amount. I mean, we're talking about like half a bite, one bite of food, sometimes it is the difference. And again, unless you're specifically measuring every tiny little detail, you're going to have some variation in there anyways. And depending on who's listening to this, if you're very obese, you have a lot of extra body weight, like extra body fat that's stored, you can definitely raise that calorie deficit to higher and you will lose weight faster. There's no doubt about that. But 500 calorie deficit is a nice, good place to be. If you don't need to lose very much weight, just start with that. And then you can always adjust, because maybe you have misrepresented your own calorie needs, which is kind of what we're going to talk about next. There's a lot of factors that influence your calorie needs, from age, your total body weight, how much muscle mass you have now, your total activity levels, what you do for work, what you like to do in your spare time. All that stuff matters a lot. There's online calculators that you can use to put in all these types of information. If you've never gotten a DEXA scan before, that's one thing you can definitely do. Hit up my guy Mike over at Live Lean RX Houston. That will give you an exact measurement of how much muscle mass you have, how much body fat you have. Because, someone at 200 pounds and 10% body fat is a lot different than 200 pounds, 20% body fat. These are two totally different body compositions that require a different amount of calories. So, if you just know your weight and your height, you can definitely use an online calculator to make a nice guess. You can find someone like myself, a nutrition coach, that can take this information as well as what I know about you as an individual and make a very educated guess based upon what I know about you and my past, other clients that I've worked with, the experiments that I've done with myself. That's a good way to do it. But the best way, and usually what I recommend people do anyways, if you're unsure and you just have no idea where to start, is to track your intake. If you track your food for one full week, 7 days straight, everything you take in, you're using a food scale, eating your normal amount, calculate the calories that you're taking in. And if you're not gaining or losing weight, you can bet that is about what we would consider your maintenance. And if we go back to what we talked about earlier, your maintenance is your midpoint, right? That's where you stay, right? Maintenance is calories in, calories out are the same. So if you track your food and you come to a determination that you eat 2,700 calories. Some days you eat 2,900, some days you eat 25. You do the math, you average it out, you track for 7 days, get the total calories, divide by 7, that's your total. Because, Mike over Live Lean, to kind of shout him out again, he told me one time that, your body works in averages. So if you overeat one day, undereat another day, it's going to average itself out right in the middle, and that's going to be your maintenance. And so then what you can do is subtract the deficit that you want. And we talked about earlier that 500 calories is a pretty good place for most people to start. So let's say I tracked my calories for 7 days. It's a little higher some days, it's a little lower other days. But when I do my average, it comes out to 2,700. All right, I want to lose some weight. I'm not real sure where to start. I'm going to go ahead and go with 500. That means I should be eating 2,200 calories per day. Do that for at least 2 weeks and see what happens, and actually be consistent with it. I hate to have to say this, but the biggest thing is that I often see people do this. They'll track their food. They'll get this average. They'll get started, but they can't actually eat 2,200 for long enough, like consistently enough to actually make a difference. Because here's what happens. This is what I want to make sure it doesn't happen to you. So that's why I'm bringing this up. You do pretty good Monday through Friday. You're at your 2,200. Saturday comes, guys call you up, a couple beers, grab some pizza, a burger, you eat out or whatever. And I'm just using extreme examples, but it really can be anything, because anytime you're eating out, you never know how much you're taking in, right? Unless you get very specific, with the restaurant, with the chef, which we can talk about. But, a couple drinks in, that rarely happens, right? So you had your 2,200 all week, Monday through Friday. Saturday comes, guys, it's very easy to get in 4,000 or 5,000. I know that sounds crazy, but it is very easy to get in 4,000 or 5,000 calories at one time. When you're out with your friends, you're snacking, appetizers, grazing here and there. Then the entree comes, a little dessert. Dude, you're at $5,000 before you know it. And if you average that out over the whole week, you're at your 2,700. And I don't do math on the fly, but if I were to guess 2,200 all week, 5,000, you actually might have even gone over 2,700 as your average, right? So the point is that one day, one meal can mess this thing up, right? We need to maintain that deficit over long periods of time because remember, hours turn into days, days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. You have to maintain your calorie deficit for days, weeks, months consistently to actually get yourself moving in the right direction, right? So how do we do that though? In simple ways, prioritize eating whole foods. Eating whole foods and eating at home. That's the number one way. Because if you do that, you're going to be shocked at how much less total food you actually consume. Because that one Saturday meal that I'm talking about, and I don't know about you, I'm not judging anyone listening to this, but that happens often a couple of times a week. And it's because the calorie density of all the foods that we're surrounded by. We were kind of talking about this before with Dr. Chapa, the environment that we're in, it begs us to overeat. It begs us to drink our calories, not only from alcohol, but from juices and soda and all kinds of different things. So we have to avoid those things. By eating whole foods, we focus on the fiber, we focus on the protein. Our total calorie intake will be less because we get full easier from those whole foods, avoiding fast foods, avoiding processed foods, avoiding fried foods that are just calorie filled. It's going to help us maintain that calorie deficit. And then beyond that, what is super important, especially in the beginning, we recommend at least 6 weeks into this, at minimum 6 weeks after your first week. So that means a total of 7. 6 weeks after your first week of tracking to find your maintenance and then calculating your deficit. For 6 weeks, you track everything very diligently. And trust me, I know it's annoying. I understand. You don't want to do it. You don't want to take a couple of minutes before you eat. You don't want to meal prep. You don't want to break out the food scale when you're doing the meal prep. I get it. I know. But if this is what you want, if you want to commit to this for 6 weeks, weigh your food, track it. Write it down. Use an app, right? You can use pen and paper if you want. You can look up all the macronutrients and calories. And right now, we're not even talking about macros, right? We're talking about total calories is all we're speaking about today. Sorry I even brought up macros, but focus on the calories first. That's what we're talking about today. You can do the math by hand if you want. There's plenty of apps that help. We like one called Macros First. It's really great. It's very easy to use, has a lot of great features, and it's free. They have a paid version. You don't need it. Use the free version. But you have to break out that food scale. You have to get your portions under control. You have to know how many calories are in 100 grams of something. Let's use peanut butter as an example. We need to know what 32, which is one serving, 32 grams of peanut butter actually looks like. Because here's what happens. You put the 32 grams on, when you're not tracking, you lick the spoon, there's another 10 grams, right? So now we're kind of slowly but surely working in the wrong direction. We wipe it off. We put it in the sink. We take there's only one piece of bread left in the loaf, right? So we just go ahead and eat an extra piece, right? And don't worry about it. Guys, you have to track all those things because otherwise that calorie deficit slowly dwindles away. That average calorie consumption over the week slowly creeps its way back up. And we have to be super careful though. So for at least 6 weeks, once you start your calorie deficit, you have to continue to diligently track your food intake every single day. That includes Friday nights and Saturdays. It includes Sundays, days you go to work, days you're off, days you hang out with the friends, days you don't, days you sit around all day. You have to track because I promise it will slowly but surely fade away from you. And view it kind of like going back to school. This is kind of this comparison that I make. Tracking your food for 6 weeks is kind of like going back to school. Nobody wants to do it. You don't like it. It's an investment. It costs money. You don't want to. It's boring. I get it. But you do it anyways because you know it's better for your future. Same thing here. Track the food. Get an understanding for the servings, for the calories. Guarantee yourself that you are in the calorie deficit that you committed to. And if you do that, you will move in the right direction. Last thing, factors outside of the food, right? Outside of the exercise. Sleep, very important, not only for hormone function, but also for decision making. If you're actually going to maintain this calorie deficit for a long time and avoid situations, be able to say no when somebody brings donuts to the office or somebody brings in lunch or offers something to you. They have, a fun size candy at the office. You have to be able to say no. And lacking sleep massively messes up your decision-making skills. Your discipline goes down your discipline goes down. I couldn't think of the word, but your discipline goes way down when you're lacking sleep. If you get good sleep, you wake up, you're energized, you're going to be way more on point, and you're going to be able to stay disciplined come those hard times. Because I promise you, it is simple, but it's not always easy. Food tastes good. We've been eating real good food for a long time, probably, if you're listening to this, myself included. I know how hard it can be. If you're lacking sleep, it's going to get a lot harder. And remember, getting up early starts with going to bed early, right? So don't stay up late and get up early. Pick your battles. You have to get adequate sleep. That kind of leads right into the next one, which is stress. If you're stressed out, your decision-making skills when it comes to food are going to be hindered. You have to manage the stress. If you're not sleeping enough, the stress is going to creep in there, right? So make sure if you need to do breathing exercises, I highly recommend journals, where you can write things down and kind of get it off your chest, get it out of your head. You cannot continue to stay, stressed out with high anxiety, because a lot of times we turn to food. Food is comfort often for a lot of people. And so we need to make sure that's not going to happen if you're going to maintain this calorie deficit for a long time. Hydration, making sure you're drinking enough water, you're getting hydrated. That's going to help you feel more full. It's going to help with digestion. So you need to make sure you're getting enough water in. Everyone's a little bit different, but at minimum, half a gallon a day, work your way up from there. If you're a bigger guy, over 200 pounds, there's really no reason. I don't think that you can't get in a full gallon of water. It's going to make you feel way better. Everything's just going to move better. It's going to flow better. And it's going to help you feel a little bit more full, right? So some cold water will definitely help with those hunger pains, right? And then, lastly, just the exercise piece of the equation. I know we talked earlier, we said that it's much easier to get into a calorie deficit by controlling our intake versus expending more. But exercise does matter. You can still expend calories when you exercise. Building more muscle mass is super important. I always say that, working out doesn't help us lose weight. I really try to help people separate weight loss from exercise. They are different things. We exercise to feel good, put on muscle, right? Gain confidence. But the weight loss piece of the equation is definitely from the diet side. Because I've seen plenty of people work out, and you probably have to. You can work out and never lose weight. You can lose weight without working out, right? Super important to keep that in mind. But by exercising, we are widening the gap of that calorie deficit, right? Because we're expending a little bit more calories. And kind of what I meant to say was that exercise doesn't always help us lose weight, but it helps us keep the weight off once we do lose it. Because by building muscle mass, we are creating more active tissue. And just because if you're listening to this and you don't have as much muscle as me, I can eat more. If you're listening to this and you have more muscle than I do, you can eat more than I can, right? Because we need calories to fuel that muscle. And if you don't, then that muscle is going to go away, right? So by lifting weights, getting stronger, resistance training, strength training, you're going to allow yourself to be able to eat more. But it does take a while for that to happen, right? So that's why I always say to separate exercise and weight loss. But if we're talking specifically about calorie deficits, exercising, strength training and cardio, both, they allow us to get into a deeper calorie deficit easier because we raise the expenditure, right? So guys, I hope all this makes sense. Calorie deficits don't have to be complicated. They are necessary if you want to change your body composition. So I highly encourage you to try it if that is your goal. If your goal is to lose weight, do what I said. Try out 7 days, track all your food, be very diligent about it. If you need help, reach out. I'm here to help. You don't even have to come sign up with us at OTG. I want to help people. So if you need help calculating your maintenance calories to be able to get to a calorie deficit, let me know. I'll help you out. But it's something you can very easily do on your own. Track your food 7 days, use an app, and then get all those 7 days, add them up, divide by 7, and weigh yourself. If you're not gaining or losing weight, that is a really good idea of what your maintenance calories are. So guys, this stuff does not have to be complicated. I know a lot of people out there overcomplicate it. It can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be. I promise you can get great results by keeping it very simple. And that's what we do. At OTG, we're all about simplicity. Fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals from a diet standpoint and an exercise standpoint. Keep these things simple. You do not have to overcomplicate this. You can work out 3 days a week, maintain a calorie deficit by eating whole, natural foods, and you can get where you want to go. If you need help, reach out to us. Our website is otgfitness.com. OTG Fitness on all social media platforms, only the greatest on YouTube. This is only the greatest podcast. And we just want to help Houston make its way up the ladder of health and fitness. So if there's any way that we can help you do that, please let us know. And guys, I'll see you next time.